Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Clutch Sports Talk with Ryan Flowers. I want to welcome all of you guys to another edition of Clutch Sports Talk. Have a good topic today to talk about with you all, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Today I wanted to dive in about a topic in regards to where are the African American baseball players? What happened to them? Don't see a lot of them anymore these days, especially in the youth leagues, high school, and professional ranks. But before I dive into any of that, I want to kind of give you, or actually I want to kind of set the stage a little bit about baseball in America. Baseball in America can date back probably to about 1896, 19th century, of course. And it wasn't until 1866 when people decided to make baseball a professional type of thing. That's where teams such as the Cubs, Reds, and Chicago White Sox decided that they wanted to be paid for their services to play the game of baseball. And it was also primarily a Midwestern, Northeastern type sport. Now, not to say that there weren't other areas in the country that weren't playing baseball, but it just primarily Midwest and Northeastern, the Northeastern was a hotbed for baseball during that time in the late 19th century. Also, you can even look at the Negro Leagues during this time. They can be dated back till 1885. And during that time when they were created, the Negro Leagues had produced several noticeable players that stand out, such as Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, and even Latin players like Martin Dihigo. But you fast forward to 1947, where Jackie Robinson became the first African American to break the color lines and play professional baseball for the Brooklyn Dodgers. And at that moment in time, baseball was king of this country. You know, obviously the white community, Caucasian community enjoyed baseball. African Americans, the Latino communities around the world, globally, baseball was at least in this country, king when it comes to sports in America. And like I said, not just amongst whites, but African Americans and everyone else. And during a course of history, many African American players, great players, were produced, such as Hank Aaron, Ernie Banks, Joe Morgan, Ken Griffey Jr., Tony Gwynn, Barry Bonds, etc., etc., etc. But after a certain point in time, you just didn't see as much. And even today, I know I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking, and we were like, well, who's a prominent African-American baseball player right now? And I had to think. You know, two names that came to mind was Mookie Betts, who just recently signed with the Dodgers, and Adam Jones via Arizona Diamondbacks. But if you remember, he played for the Baltimore Orioles, and he was a monster there. Now he's kind of like on the back end of his career, but those are only two players that came to mind. Now there might be some other ones out there that I'm just not thinking about, but those are the two that jumped out to me initially. So my question again, what happened to African Americans in baseball? Before I get into my theories, I'm going to kind of kick a little fact to you a little bit here. Per a Forbes.com article that I read, in 1981, 18% of the Major League Baseball was African American. Okay, 18%. That's 1981. In 2009, only 8% was African American. So a 10% decrease. Wasn't high to begin with. And then it decreased 10% last year. Meanwhile, the NBA and NFL have a very large percentage of African Americans that play in the sport. The NBA comes in at 74% and the NFL is 68%. So more than half. Way more, than almost double than baseball ever has, at least since 1981. And then also in 2002, per a Wall Street Journal article that I read, 9 million kids were polled between the ages of 7 and 17 that played baseball. But by 2013, 41% of that 9 million has decreased. So there was a 41% decrease in kids, African American kids playing baseball. Now that's a huge, quite considerable drop off. 41% from 2002 to 2013. But why is that? Well, first and foremost, the NFL and NBA reign supreme as far as sports are concerned in this country. The NFL is at the top. Then maybe college football, NBA, March Madness when that rolls around, UFC, then maybe baseball. Maybe. I don't know. Certain areas. So for me, there's a social disconnect when it comes to young African American kids and baseball. Like I mentioned before, I couldn't even tell you more than 2 players that were African American. Now, like I said, there are way more. I know that. I understand that. I'm not ignorant. But my point is that I couldn't even think of any like off the top of my head like that. Not like I could with the NBA or the NFL. The NBA has stars galore. It's a star-driven league. You hear that all the time. Your LeBrons, your KDs, your Kawhis, your ADs, your James Hardens, Russell Westbrook, all these guys. I just roll that off like that. Snapping my finger, boom, I could name all those players. NFL, same concept. Patrick Mahomes, Zeke Elliott, Julio Jones. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. So socially, a lot of kids growing up in certain areas of the country, they don't have a connection. They don't see someone like them playing that sport. At least not a lot of them. A lot of kids are growing up, they're seeing LeBron. They're like, oh man, he grew up, underprivileged, and now look where he's at. Not a lot of baseball players, at least for African American kids to look up to say that. At least none that I know of. So socially, African American kids just can't connect. So therefore, they don't even bother trying playing the sport because there's no connection to them for that. There's no one for them to turn on the TV and say, hey man, I want to be just like him. Now there used to be, like that list I mentioned before with your Hank Aaron's, your Tony Gwynn's, Ken Griffey's, guys like that. At least for when I was growing up, I used to look up to Ken. I loved Ken Griffey, man. Barry Bonds, before juicing. Guys like that. Growing up, I was a Dodgers fan, of course. I'm originally from LA, but my sister was a diehard Atlanta Braves fan during the 90s. The teams with Tom Glavine, Tommy Maddox, or Greg Maddux, excuse me, not Tommy Maddox. Steve Avery, that pitching, Fred McGriff, David Justice, Otis Nixon. So I watched baseball. I loved the game, man. But after a certain point, I stopped playing and I couldn't connect to the sport anymore because there was no one for me to really kind of get behind. So baseball in that aspect just has a problem with connecting to fans, yet alone a younger demographic as well. The other theory that I want to kind of touch base on is from a financial or economical standpoint. An article that I was reading estimated that 45% of young black children are living under the poverty line. Well, how does that come into play? Well, it does in a sense. Well, I don't know if many of you are familiar with travel ball or club ball in baseball. It's the equivalent to AAU in basketball, where kids are the best talent. They're all coming together. They're paying to play other teams from other regions, other states, et cetera, et cetera. But like I said, a lot of these kids are paying. And if 45% of young black children in this country are living below the poverty line, they and their families cannot afford to pay the amount of money that you need to play club or travel ball. That's a simple math. So, and on top of that, in theory, baseball, it could be considered a cheap sport. All you need is a stick and a ball, because people have been doing that for years, especially in the Latin countries. Yes, that is true. If you want to get your friends together and just play, outside, that's all you need. I get it. But in order to be successful, to be at a competitive level, you need equipment, and that stuff is not cheap. Bats can range from $100 up, gloves, balls, batting cage time, playing fields, cleats, jerseys, travel, all that, which is all encompassed in travel ball. And that's why it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to play. My wife and I know a family friend that their two boys played club ball, and they've expressed how much it's cost. Thousands of dollars. And people are asking, well, why don't you just go and sign your kid up at the local rec? Well, you could. I mean, that's how I was introduced to the sport. My dad took me down to Pan Pacific Park in LA, and he signed me up. But the difference then and it is now is completely different. The competition levels is just it's two opposite ends. In order to be successful and to test your skill, you need to be playing travel ball because that's where all the best talent is being played at. But you can't do that unless you pay. Now, you can have scholarships and sponsorships and try to fundraise, but the fact of the matter is that it's still expensive to play, and not every kid has the right or is privileged enough to do that. Now, it doesn't mean that the privileged kids, they're bad people or they're bad because they can afford to play. And that's not what I'm getting into. But my point is that if you live in a ghetto per se, and you don't have the means in order to play this particular brand of baseball, you're probably not going to want to play anyway, and you're never going to even try. And so therefore you may have the skill and the acumen, but you're never going to know because you can't afford, you just don't have the financial means to do so. So you don't even bother playing, which explains why a lot of our best athletes don't even play baseball. Same thing goes into soccer, which that's a whole nother debate. But our best athletes do not play baseball in this country. They play basketball and football predominantly. Now, I will say this about baseball. Once you make it, and if you make it, there's a lot of bucks to be made. You got guys making up to $400, $500 million. Those are the top tier guys, like your Bryce Harpers, your Mike Trouts, guys like that. You probably don't know who those guys are. The most casual fans don't know. But those guys are making buku bucks. But not every kid playing baseball is going to make that level. When you look at a kid coming from the hood, the ghetto, in an underprivileged community, he's looking at it like, well, my mom needs this. My family needs this. I need to cash in now. So leagues like the NBA, where you only have to play 1 year of college ball or at least sit out 1 year, and you can probably go overseas and play professionally and get paid. Kids are chomping at the bit to do that more so than playing baseball, when you can get drafted, but you still have to go through the minor league ranks. So it can take longer, and you may not even get that payoff that you're probably expecting. Yeah, you may get a little something up front, but it's not going to compare to what you can probably make in the NBA as a lottery pick or even in the NFL draft. Now, in college football, it's a little different. You have to play at least 3 years, or you have to be 3 years removed from your senior prom or graduation. Then you can be eligible for the NFL draft. And if you're really good enough, you'll be in the top 10 and you'll make really decent money. But baseball does pay more over the long run. That's if you could make it to the show. Big if, though, because there's a lot of levels you have to get up through, and it's hard. And I have a friend that'll talk about that later on in the show. But hey, I'm going to take a quick break before I introduce to you guys my first guest. It's a good one. It's going to be a good one. So just sit back and relax. This is Clutch Sports Talk with Ryan Flowers. Let's go.
Hey everybody, this is Aubrey, and I want you guys to listen to my daddy's podcast called Clutch Sports Talk with Ryan Flowers. Let's go!
Welcome back from the break, everyone. This is Clutch Sports Talk with Ryan Flowers. To introduce my next guest on the show, I want to kind of give you guys a quick background. He is the head baseball coach for Morse High School Tigers in San Diego, California. They are also the Division 5 CIF division champions. I'd like to welcome to the show Mr. Dallas Booker. Welcome, Coach. How you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you.
I'm so glad that you're able to kind of join me and talk to me about this episode that I'm doing about African Americans in baseball.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate you having me on today.
Yeah, man, no worries. So I want to kind of just get really quick into this. What's your history in baseball as far as you growing up, college, professional, anything like that?
You know what? I grew up playing baseball my entire life. I didn't play college or professional baseball, but I played high school baseball, and most of my friends growing up played ball, and some did go on to play minor league baseball and college baseball. So, just as far as like my background, I have a rich history of just being around the game, And I've been coaching for 14 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. I started out at the little league level, and I coached there for 7 years in the neighborhood I grew up in, and then I got an opportunity to coach at Morris, which was the high school I attended, and I've been coaching there for 7 years. So.
Awesome. So when you were growing up, can you kind of take me into or describe some of the teams that you played on demographically? Were they mixed? Were they white, black, Hispanic?
Well, majority of the teams I played on were mixed, between Hispanics and African Americans. But back then, everybody pretty much played whatever season it was. That's the sport you played. So the league that we grew up playing up in was in Canto, and we had a whole bunch of kids that played, but majority of them were blacks, but we were mixed in with the Hispanics also.
Okay. And your coaching, was it mixed too? Was it just a bunch of dads, or were there just some kind of like part-time guys out there? And explain to me kind of what they were like.
Well, yeah, back then, you had I felt we had quality coaches, but they were just like dads and stuff helping out, but they had baseball knowledge, so we didn't just grow up playing off of our talent. We were actually like learning the game from the coaches that we actually had. Well, I would say most of us,
okay.
But I was fortunate enough to have my older brother. He was like one of the top players in the state when he was in high school, so
wow.
He would work with me and stuff. So I was fortunate to have that.
Wow. Okay. And what were the demographics of the coaches? Predominantly mixed as well again, or just?
Yeah, mixed. Yeah, majority black and Hispanic, and we had a few white coaches, but it was just a few of them though.
Okay, cool. Now, how did you get into coaching at Morris High?
Well, like I said, I was coaching Little League, and one of the kids I had coached some years, when I first started, his dad was a coach on the football team. And so Morris had a situation where, they got rid of all the coaches, and, he said, hey, come up here, you're looking for some coaches. I went up there and I got hired as the JV coach my first year. And then they brought me up to varsity. And 3 years later, I was the head coach on varsity.
Nice. So with that said, how does it feel to be an African-American baseball coach?
You know what? I think it's only like 6 of us, I believe, in San Diego County. So there's not many of us, yes. So I feel, blessed, to be, an African American, head baseball coach in San Diego, because like I said, there's not many of us. So I feel that I have to prove myself more than others, but I trust in me and my coaching staff. And, first year we had only won 5 games, and 2 years later, we ended up winning the championship.
Wow. That's incredible, man. It's a process. I know that word gets used a lot, but it's what it is.
Yeah, it truly is. It truly is.
So do you feel, what's the best way? Not slighted, but like, do you feel like you get different treatment because you're an African-American baseball coach?
I'll say this. When I first took over the program, I felt that way,
okay.
Right? But I feel that once you prove yourself, you can gain the respect of the other coaches. There's always going to be coaches who look at us a certain way,
right?
But like I said, as I'm starting to, week my program start to have success, I see like certain doors open up. Like this year, they voted me to be the our league representative.
Wow,
So which is pretty
amazing.
cool. Right. So now I kind of get on the inside and have my input on certain decisions that's being made. So it's pretty cool.
Wow, that's a tremendous honor, man. I mean, wow, that's really good. I'm actually proud to hear that, man. So congrats on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So in regards to your players and the school that you coach at, obviously you're a graduate of Morse High, 1999, if I'm not correct, right?
Correct.
All right, class of 99. What's the environment your players are coming from? Like, what's a day in the life of most of your players?
Well, our school is in what we call Southeast San Diego,
and familiar.
Yeah, you're right. It's produced a lot of professional athletes. And
Right.
like Adam Jones came from graduated from Morris.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
yeah. So he comes back and he helps out a lot too. But in 2020, it's not the same as it was, when I went to Morris, or when I grew up in this area. But we still have the gang element, and you have the drug element and stuff like that. So it's a different generation, but they still have those temptations,
Right.
that we have to deal with.
Right.
But it's a difficult task, but we try our best to keep our kids occupied, so they don't slip into those areas.
Now, do you think that kind of hinders their performance, or you think they're able to kind of just put the blinders on and come out and perform?
Well, like I said, it all depends. Some of our kids, come from a 2-parent home, which does make a difference. And some kids, they don't have the best situations at home. So it just all depends. If that kid can, stay focused and not get distracted, and like I said, in gangs and
drugs and all the other stuff.
Drugs, all that stuff.
Right.
And we have some players, man. Sometimes I got to take them to go buy them dinner because they might not have nothing that night.
Wow.
And yes, I can only imagine. They waking up in the morning, I had no breakfast. They coming to school, and then we looking at their grades, and it's like, man, you're struggling, but we don't understand, that it's other elements in their life that's affecting their schoolwork.
So there's definitely an uphill battle that they're facing.
Right.
Okay. Now, I kind of talked about this earlier in my episode. I kind of dove into travel ball, club ball. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Now, did you play club ball growing up?
Well, when I was growing up, we really didn't have the club ball wasn't really like it was actually starting to gain some steam a little bit. But we just played in our little league and our summer ball leagues and stuff like that. But yeah.
Now, do any of your kids on your team participate in that in the off season?
Yes,
they do. Okay. If you kind of had to put a percentage on it, about roughly how many of your kids play?
I would say at least half that's in our program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, would you consider some of your players to be medium? What's the word? Middle class, upper middle class, or are they below that?
Well, our area is very diverse when it comes to that.
Okay.
And like I said, some are middle class, some is on the end of the spectrum. So individually, it just all depends.
Okay.
But I actually, we have both on both sides.
Okay, so it's split in half, like you said.
Right.
Now, are there kids that maybe, you don't have to name any names, and I totally understand, but do you think there are kids that are on your team that don't play club or travel ball, but have the skills and the talent, but they just can't afford to do it?
Yes, but so let me say this.
Okay.
And this is just from my perspective because it's different across the country, but in San Diego, year-round sports is promoted in each sport. So we got travel baseball, you have AAU basketball, you got club soccer, and now you actually have, football actually taking that model with 7-on-7.
Right.
And even on top of that, in San Diego, they have spring tackle football leagues.
Right. Yep.
So when the kids should be starting baseball in February, March, through June, July, whatever, some of these kids are putting the pads back on
Right. Instead of playing baseball.
So I say that to say this. Money can be an issue for some of these parents, but some of these kids, they're just not sitting at home. Some of them are playing year-round football, year-round basketball,
right? Okay.
Club soccer, whatever it is. So they're spending their money in one way or another.
Okay. So it's not necessarily a financial or economical problem. It's more along the lines that they'd rather just play football in the spring than baseball.
Right. And, when I first started coaching high school baseball, I had no knowledge of these spring season football leagues,
Right.
And I'm seeing these kids, walking to the field with football gear. I'm like, hey man, what y'all doing? Oh, we got a game today. I'm like, how come you ain't playing baseball? Like, oh well, I'm a coach. I need to get better. So I'm trying to enhance my skills. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then like once my son started to play tackle football, and the first year he played, he was 9, and in San Diego you have Pop Warner and you have youth football. Youth football goes by your age, and Pop Warner goes by your weight.
Right.
So he was 9. He was the youngest. He was the lightest on the team, and he struggled. And but I expected that. It's his first year playing tackle. He's the youngest. He's still trying to learn. So his coach was trying to encourage me to sign him up for this tackle football spring league. I'm like, man, you crazy. My son playing baseball. And they're kind of looking at me like, oh, okay, well, he's not going to improve. I'm like, okay, well, it's whatever. But right. But
how old's your son again?
He's 15. He was 15. A freshman this year at Bush. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So to segue into that about the kids, what's the sense amongst your players and even your son, if you want to include him, about players that they see in the major leagues? Like, do they follow any particular African-American baseball players? Do they see themselves probably playing professional baseball at some point?
Well, that's a difficult question because
I'm sorry.
No. Because the reason why I say that is okay. Just let me give you a little bit of background.
Sure.
When it comes to my players.
Sure.
So in the off season, school starts in September, so we normally start our off season program in October. So we lift weights, conditioning, and we also go in the classroom. And so one day, I was talking about the Negro Leagues, and they laughed, And I'm like, what's so funny? It was like the Negro Leagues. They were like, what is that? And so they're like, right. So when they say, what is that? I laughed. And I was like, you guys don't even know what the Negro Leagues is? And they was like, nah, coach. Some of them knew, but majority of the kids didn't know. So,
which I get.
So we started to talk about the Negro Leagues, and we're actually trying to plan a trip out to the Negro League Museum out in Kansas City.
Oh, nice.
And possibly play, a few games out there, but, that's still in the works. But this year I actually had the kids, each kid in our program, JV and varsity, write a report on any player that they wanted to, but they had to have started their career prior to 1999. Okay. So to my surprise, majority of the kids had wrote reports on African-American players.
Wow.
So yeah, that kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh, okay, because I try to promote the history of the game and mainly African American players, because I think that's that's a lost story.
Right.
So it just showed like they were actually listening and paying attention to what we're talking about. But as far as them having aspirations of playing in the major leagues, yeah, we have some. But I have kids who play multiple sports. I got kids who play, soccer. That's on my team. Football, basketball. So, I try to, preach to them, hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket, especially if you're an athlete.
Right, of course.
But, yeah, but I have a few kids, who they, they want to play Major League Baseball. But I just think, honestly, most of high school kids who play the sports in general, they just want to come out there, play ball, have fun with their friends, and then whatever they do in life, that's what they do.
Right. Yeah, you can't expect too much. They're still kids. They don't even know what they're going to be doing in the next two minutes, yet alone the future. So that's cool.
Right.
Who did you like watching to play when you were growing up, being from San Diego?
Okay, so the funny part is I grew up a Cubs fan.
Oh, get out of here.
Right. And so I'm trying to explain to my players that, back in the day, you didn't have, a Padres network or,
Right. It's different.
so in the summer you had WGN who played the
Exactly.
Cubs, and then you had TBS who played the Braves.
Right.
And so, I and you're going to laugh when I say this. When I was a youngster, my favorite player was Ryan Sandberg.
Man, get out of here.
Right, so
I love
everybody
Ryan
used
Sandberg,
to clown
man.
me. Yeah, I used to love Ryan Sandberg. I played infield, he's a second baseman, and everybody used to clown me, be like, "Oh man, how you like Ryan Sandberg?" I'm like, "Oh, I just gravitated towards him, And after he left, I was a big Sammy Sosa fan.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
nice,
so
man. That's funny. I liked I forgot his last name was Dawson. What was his first name?
Andre Dawson.
Yeah, man, he was a beast,
Right.
man. He was a beast for them Cub team in the 90s, man. So
Right,
that's funny.
right.
You end up, growing up, in San Diego, but you ended up liking the Cubs. So that's interesting. That's very interesting. But well, Coach, man, hey, I appreciate your time, man. We're gonna have to do this again some other time, but I appreciate you coming on the show. Congratulations on that successful season you guys had last year. I hope you guys are able to come back and play baseball soon after this whole pandemic is all wrapped up. But Coach, we appreciate you, man, and good luck to you guys in the future.
Hey, thank you for having me on. Hey, whenever you want to talk about sports, man, I'm always available. Just give me a heads up, and just thank you once again.
All right, you're very welcome. That was the head coach of the Morse High Tigers in San Diego, California, division champions. Great guy to talk to. He had a lot to say about, his kids growing up in that area in San Diego. And it seems like it's not, from his standpoint, not a monetary problem. Just kids on his team, in his school, they just seem to be, what's the best word? Caught up in other sports. So it's not just baseball, basketball. They're playing football, soccer, all these other types of sports. So great interview. We're going to take one other quick break before we get to our last guest of the show. So sit back and relax. This is Clutch Sports Talk with Ryan Flowers. Let's go.
Hey everybody, this is Dallas, and listen to Clutch Sports Talk, and let's go.
Welcome back to the show. This is Clutch Sports Talk with Ryan Flowers. We're going into our final segment on the show. This episode, I discussed the African-American baseball player. To wrap up this episode, I wanted to introduce to you another guest. He played professionally, collegiately, and he's the proud parent of two sons that play travel ball. I'd like to welcome to the show, Mr. LaRon McGee. Welcome, LaRon, man. How you doing today?
I'm fine.
Hey,
Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. Hey, I just want to talk to you a little bit about this episode I'm doing about African Americans in baseball, and I understand that you have an extensive history with travel ball. Can you kind of dive into that a little bit, or actually kind of give me a bio on yourself?
Well, originally born and raised in San Diego, California. My dad was an avid baseball player. Played some college ball. Got me going from the time I was walking. Played my whole life all the way, little college ball, little pro baseball. Got drafted by Seattle Mariners, 96, out of Morris High School, and went from there. A few injuries derailed my career, but here now. Got two sons who play avidly, love the game of baseball, so I follow it closely, and I'm involved in everything.
Cool. What are their ages?
I have a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old.
Oh, nice. So they're right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle. My 7-year-old, he plays up though. He's a little special. So he's been playing 9U ball for the last year and a half.
Oh wow!
So since he was 5, he's been playing. So he's one of those. Yeah, he's one of them different type of kids.
And they're both playing travel club baseball, correct?
Right. Correct.
Okay. Can you kind of describe to me, because a lot of my listeners probably don't know what club or travel baseball is. Can you kind of go into that a little bit for me?
Yeah, it's unlike your regular local little league. Whereas in your local little league, you sign up, you pay your money, you play. Well, club ball is something you try out for, and you have to make the team. So a lot of coaches, what they do is they scout around for some of the top local little league prospects, and then if they see that they can do something with them, they try to recruit them to their travel team or their club ball team.
So is it kind of like the equivalent of like AAU in basketball?
Pretty much. This is the same thing. I would say it's very equivalent
same
to that
concept. Okay. Now, do you guys run into a lot of teams that are predominantly black, in these travel ball clubs?
Rarely will you see a all black team. I'll say in the last 4 years, because my oldest son been playing since 9, I ran up against I've seen 2 teams that had African Americans on, more than 4 African Americans on it.
Wow.
I've seen only 2 teams, and one was out of LA, and then we played a big tournament in Omaha, Nebraska. There was a team from Georgia. Other than that, you get 1 or 2. That's the max.
Wow. Dang. So do you think maybe, well, it's not so much the environment, but do you think kids are just not playing baseball? Young African American kids are just not playing baseball anymore?
A lot of it has to do with, their surroundings. And I would say in the last probably 15 and 20 years, people migrated towards basketball and football because it was more readily available in the neighborhood. And then with a lot of single moms, dads aren't home to play catch with their sons or take them to the park and teach them. And most African American males, they started playing in Little League and they're probably faded out from baseball around 12.
Right.
So they don't have the knowledge to teach their kids at that upper level, which in basketball they do, and in football they do.
Right, because it seems like most African American dads, they probably feel like they're the expert on football and basketball.
Right. Yep.
They all are.
And the difference is in your neighborhood, there's a court.
True.
There's a court you can go to, and if there's a patch of grass, you can play football.
Right.
But you need a baseball field in order to play baseball.
Right. Yeah, because you can't just show up somewhere and start playing. I guess back in New York they play like stickball, but it's different when you're trying to be competitive.
Right. And you can get 5 friends and have a 3-on-3 game in the middle of the street with football. You swinging a hard ball in the bat in the street, everybody in the neighborhood gonna tell you to cut it out.
Right, because you're liable to probably break something at some point.
And who can pay for a brand new car window or house window?
Right.
So that kind of takes the African American kids away from the sport, and it's a slower sport too.
Right. So
and go ahead.
No, finish your thought. You're okay.
What I was gonna say was baseball is a game of failure. So like they tell you, if you fail 7 out of 10 times, what are you? You're a Hall of Famer,
right?
Because you batted 300.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? And most kids, especially African American kids, they can't deal with failure. Because from the day you were born, it was like, you got to succeed. You better be tougher than him. You better beat him up. You better be stronger. You better be the survival of the fittest. So in baseball, all that failure, it turns the African American kids away. Where in football, it's like, throw that ball in the air, I go Randy Moss somebody, that's a touchdown.
Right, you're celebrating.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So do you think mentally kids, young African American kids today, they're not, well, I'm not going to say they're not equipped, because I mean every situation is different, but to your point, a lot of them aren't set up mentally to deal with the rigors of playing baseball.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. When I first got drafted, my scout told me baseball is 90% mental and 10% physical. And you would think, what are you talking about? And I don't agree with that a whole 100%, because the physical part, you can do that. It's the mental part for me that threw me off. Was the first time I got put on the bench, and I'm a healthy, and I know I'm better than the guy in front of me.
Right.
But yet I'm not playing. So I'm like, as African Americans, we want to say something. We want to be boisterous and be like, hey, I'm better than him. Put me in. Well, they don't work like that. And then if you say, well, if you don't want me, get rid of me. Well, guess what? They got 100 other ball players, and you're out of there. So you don't have the mental part of it. Is you have to be mentally strong. They say things. For me, as an African American coming up, if you put me next to a Dominican player, I look just like them. And so a lot of times the white players didn't know that I wasn't Spanish, and they would say stuff, and I would hear it, and I'd be like, hey man, what you say? And they would make comments like, go back to your country, or this is the white man's game, and
Oh.
And just imagine if you that one minority on the team, you don't have nobody to turn to. So you just feel like, you know what? I don't need that, especially if I had a football scholarship or, something else on the line.
Right. It's more of a hassle, it seems like, to go and deal with that than to just go play basketball and football, where half of those leagues are comprised of African Americans. So you feel
exactly. And you got people to talk to and things like that. And then when you 19, 20, you still know you got life in you. So you can go back and say, you know what, forget baseball. I might have signed for 200,000, 100,000. So I got my money. Now I'm gonna go play football.
Wow.
But if you notice, like a lot of the black kids that do come up in baseball now, their fathers were professional players, so they have that mental aspect of the game.
Wow. Yeah. That's actually really good point, and it kind of segues me into this other question. What's your take on, Kyler Murray? Right, we all familiar with him. He was the number 1 pick last year for Arizona Cardinals. He was also drafted 10th by the Oakland A's. He decided to not play baseball but play football overall. What's your take on him and his situation?
Very unique individual, gifted in 2 sports. Baseball, he probably would have been an all-star. But like I said, him coming up, he had a father that was an ex-quarterback, and played at a high level. He just came up in the era when they weren't allowing black quarterbacks to play.
Right.
So when he had his son, he groomed his son. And I hear his dad is one of the top quarterback gurus, like for kids coming up. His camps he do is one of the biggest things. Kyler Murray went to he played in, was it Allen, Texas?
Right.
And the school, he was the first one to be a 3 or 4-time state champion.
Mm-hmm.
So he did miraculous things. But he came from an affluent background. His parents had money. So he was exposed to that life. So his dad was able to give him all of that stuff at a young age. Right. And what African American kids, what happens is we don't get that coaching at a young age. Right. We get it as we start to develop and get better. Now kids are getting it from the day they're born, and they're able to prosper and be that much better.
Right. So yeah, especially with Kyler Murray, a kid like that, where his parents, they had the means to do certain things. My next topic would be, can you explain to me the financial side of travel or club ball, or even like training that maybe you give to your sons? Do you pay for any others particular services to help your sons perform better?
Well, I mean, it's all of that's out there. I mean, you got now in every sport, you can get top-notch training if you're willing to pay for it, and some of the kids, like if you go onto these YouTube channels, you see these kids and they're working out with a speed coach, and then they have a strength and conditioning coach, and then they have an infield coach and a hitting coach. They got 4 or 5 different coaches, where parents are shelling out thousands of dollars because they want to see their kids succeed, and then their kids love the game. Not everybody can afford that, and that's where baseball is not thriving in the inner cities, because black kids, they don't have access to that. You do see the ones that they get lucky where they're just such a good athlete, and there may be that coach or that family that says, you know what, we taking him in because we know he can make it. In my situation, I was blessed like that, where a family see my athletic abilities and says, you know what, we're not going to let him go that way. And they were able to help me out, but not everybody has that opportunity. But you think, like, in basketball, all you need is a pair of shoes.
Right.
And parents are willing to sacrifice for a pair of shoes. You know what I'm saying? Like, every kid owns 3 to 4 pair of shoes now. You know what I mean? So he can wear a pair of good Nikes and go play basketball. The coach will provide the uniforms. AAU basketball, some of it is sponsored. You see all the NBA players have their own team now, like Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook. Right. LeBron. Dwight Howard has a team in Atlanta. LeBron's got 2 or 3 teams in Akron. So those kids don't pay for nothing. The travel's all taken care of. And they fundraise and stuff like that. But in baseball, it's a little bit different. You have monthly dues, and then you got to travel, and you got to pay travel expenses. You got to pay tournament costs. It's just a lot of money, where every time you look, you get nickel and dime for something.
Wow.
So that's what takes the African Americans away from the game.
Right.
Not only is it the monthly fees to play, you got equipment. A good glove is $300-$400 now. A good bat is $400 or $500. Helmets, cleats, all that stuff just costs, and it becomes a weekly grind, a weekly pay, more so than a monthly pay.
Right, man. So yeah, it's a big undertaking, basically, what you're saying.
You pay, and then you got to look at the coaching now. So some of these coaches, back in our day, a coach was a volunteer dad or somebody that coached in the neighborhood for 30 years. He's always been the coach. So you grew up, you knew you was going to play for Coach Johnson. He'd been there 30 years. And there was like 5 coaches that been there forever.
Right.
Well, now they're ex-players and they're making money. So they're making money off starting their own travel ball club. So like you got Nomar Garcia Parra, you got all these people, they have club ball teams. And then once they start getting bigger and bigger and bigger and you got more people playing, that's more money, more revenue coming in for you. Right. You got some club ball teams charge as low as $60, some charge as much as $500 a month. So those that charge between the $350 and the $400, you got to think if you got 2 teams at every age level, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, all the way to 16, and you got 13 kids on each team, you do 13 times 100 players, you're raking in $13,000 a month.
Wow, big business.
A big business, and that's what it's turned into because now you got dads who my son's going to be a shortstop, and he goes out, he tries out for the team, and he's not good enough. So what does that dad do? He doesn't make his kid work harder. He starts his own team. Yeah. So it's getting watered down a little bit, but back in the days, it was like if you played on the travel ball team, you were only the elite play. Now anybody could play.
Wow. So like you said, it's watered down now. The validity of it has decreased. So it's almost become like recreational baseball, like back in the day when I used to play.
Right. But you still have your elite teams because they break it up now where they say, okay, we got majors, and then we got like AA, AAA. So,
it's like different divisions.
Different divisions within age groups, which make it competitive. But now what's happening is, like I said, a lot of ex-players are coming back and they're coaching, and they're bringing the price of it up.
That's a shame.
And black kids can't afford it. It's just as simple as that. Like, I'm blessed that my kids are able to play.
Right. Man.
Because when I was coming up, I couldn't get on teams like that.
Right.
Until once I got like 15 in high school, then the coaches said, you know what, you're going to play. I don't care. And then you had like scout league teams and things like that were free.
Right.
But, you still had to be good enough to make it.
Wow. Man, very interesting, man. Well, LaRon, man, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks again. Appreciate your honesty and your time again for, about talking about this episode about African-American baseball players, man. So we'll have to do this again sometime soon, man. Take care of yourself, all right?
All right, you too. Thank you. Call me anytime, man.
All right, peace.
All right, later.
All right, that was LaRon McGee. Had a lot of good facts, man. One thing I thought that was interesting, he talked about the mentality of the young African-American ball player, and maybe some of them aren't geared mentally to withstand some of the things that they have to go through, which is interesting. Money was also one of the keys he pointed out, but I think the mentality of it is why deal with some of the racism and the prejudice that you have to deal with sometimes, even to this day, when a kid can just go play basketball or football and be around other people that look like him. So great segment. Thank you again. Before I get out of here, I want to thank Coach Booker of the Morris High Tigers and LaRon McGee. Guys did a tremendous job on the show. As far as baseball is concerned, moving forward, I don't think the African-American baseball player is going to be rejuvenated anytime soon. I think with the NBA and the NFL being the top dog here in this country, and mainly the NFL, I think baseball, the great African-American baseball player, we're just not going to see as many of them come out anymore. So, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can continue to listen to all of my other episodes located on the Anchor podcast app, Spotify, TuneIn. Hey guys, I appreciate you. Keep supporting me. This is Clutch Sports Talk with Ryan Flowers. Until next time, let's go.